Hey guys, Kevin Ismail for the season premiere of Empire Season 2, Episode 1, The Devils Are Here. And yes, I will be reviewing Empire individually to you guys this year. Reason I did that is simply because when I was doing my Season 1 review last year, I realized that I couldn't review it as a season. Like, you guys can see my review is almost 40 minutes long, and I just thought, you know what, I should probably just review it individually because there's so much that happens in every episode, and there's a lot to talk about that I just couldn't talk all about in one specific video, so I figured I should probably review it individually. Plus, I really end up loving the show. Empire, for me, was one of the biggest surprises this year by far. I did not expect to love it like I did, because I really do love this show, but I never expected to love it like I did. And I was definitely looking forward to this premiere, and I have to say, it really didn't disappoint at all. I see Season 2 being 10 times better than Season 1. I mean, there was so much that happened just in this premiere in general. I mean, seriously, so much happened, and this, while this was a season premiere, it was a lot bigger than that. Like, it felt more like we were episodes in. That's something I always love that Empire is doing. It's always moving, and this episode definitely was like that. It was moving, evidence right by the first scene where we realize that this episode takes place 3 months after the last season, which I thought was very smart of them to do a time jump, because with this we get a lot of character development and sort of some, some differences in certain characters, and I'll get into that. We start off right away, there's a free Lucious concert at the park, and, basically they're not talking about, and basically they're going on all this bullshit, about how the black men in the prison that shouldn't be, and while I do think this is a good issue that they're, talking about, people that were unjustifyingly accused and things like that, obviously, Lucius did kill Bunky, so Hakeem obviously is really pissed off because he doesn't think that they should be doing this at all. He thinks it's ridiculous that this is going on. And he says Jamal will not like the hostile takeover, but Cookie says he'll have to understand and says he needs to impress the lady investor. And you can tell that basically they're doing this entire thing just for, basically for publicity and also for Lucius to look good, so that way they're well respected, and that basically they don't have a bad reputation. That really is what it seemed to me that they were trying to do. So Jamal tells Cookie at the stage side that Bill Clinton is there. He says he feels bad for thinking she'd sell his dad out, and he says she should go visit Dad, and she reminds him they didn't visit, and she reminds him that they did not visit her when she was in prison. They didn't visit her, so she doesn't plan on visiting him. And Cookie is then lowered onto the stage in this ridiculous gorilla costume inside a cage. There are cheers as she reveals herself. It's as ridiculous as you can imagine. She's asking how much longer they're going to treat, the cops going to treat them like animals, and she says, our fathers, brothers, and husbands and sons are victims of this system. He says, justice for all, gets the crowd to chant how much longer, stirs them up like crazy. It's going well, but again, it's all basically just for publicity. They don't really agree with these things. They don't really agree that Lucius is wrongfully accused. None of them agree with this, really. And the rally is all about hands up. And basically we see Al Sharpton is there. And Cookie asks him to help. But he says word on the street is that Lucius is in deep and he can't help. And basically, Jamal then comes on stage. The women go wild, obviously. You can see how much everyone loves Jamal. And Cookie watches off stage as their son sings about injustice. I really like the song that they did, Born to Lose. I thought it was a very good song. And we see Lucius at the jail, and the concert is playing, and he smiles as he sees Jamal singing. And a guy then runs up to Lucius, and he tells him that, basically, this guy is Cookie's cousin, and he says Frank Gathers is being transferred, and Lucius says it's his problem because of being involved with Cookie. And, of course, Frank Gathers is the man that, we'll get into that, but that is definitely very interesting. It definitely makes us think, who's Frank Gathers, and, definitely I thought that was very well done. So Lucius is watching Hakeem sing with his brother, and he sings about his dad being innocent, and you can see how happy he is. Well, not, did I say Hakeem? I meant Jamal. You can see how happy he is about Jamal, and, but again, you kind of have to wonder, why did he give him Empire over Hakeem? You can tell throughout this entire episode that Hakeem and Andre wanted Empire just as much as Jamal did, and you have to think, why did he give them, why'd he give Jamal Empire? Kind of seems like in this episode that probably was not the best thing to do. But Cookie then meets with Mimi White, new character played by Marissa Tomei, and Tricky, and she takes them to the stage to see their future investments, and Mimi says that Lucious is the reason she's there, and Cookie says he's not the only reason. Then she looks Cookie up and down and makes a sexy remark, and Lucious sees them talking and is not pleased, and later he plays hoops with some guys, and another guy points out that Frank Gathers is being loaded off from the transfer bus, and Chris Rock played Frank Gathers of all people. I thought he did a really good job here, honestly. I was able to take him seriously. I didn't think that he was miscasted at all. I thought, besides the star power, and despite the fact that Empire tries to get every guest star possible, I thought Chris Rock did a very good job here. And basically realized that Frank is the guy that Lucious dealt drugs with back in the day, and you can tell right away how many problems it's going to cause for Lucious. And Frank walks down the corridor and people clear out, and you can just see how much everyone is fearful of this guy. And Lucious walks up on him, and Frank says, seems like yesterday tells some others he and Cookie used to work for him. They high-five and hug it out, and it seemed like they were going to, be really pissed at each other, but then they decide to hug it out, and Frank asks about Cookie, and Lucious says he hasn't talked to her, and Frank says the two of them are inspirational figures, and Lucious says he inspires fear and tells him to stay cool. So, Cookie then comes into Empire, and Hakeem chases her away from some donuts, because apparently she's on a diet, and she says she's checking on Tiana, then we'll come to his rehearsal, and then we start to see Jamal is very much not doing a very good job, with being, with taking over Empire. Obviously, he's the one that's taken over for Lucious right now, and he probably was not the best person to do that because he's very stressed out. He's telling Becky that he needs to cover for her, but she says Mark will be furious since they were trying to sign Derek for months, and he gets into a whole argument with Hakeem not liking the album cover and things like that. And these were all things that Lucious dealt with, but Lucious knew what he was doing because he did this stuff for years, and Jamal really doesn't. And basically, you're kind of seeing that the fame is starting to get to Jamal. He is kind of starting to turn into Lucious, and it's really interesting. So Andre grabs Jamal about his schedules. He says he just wants to be in the studio, and Jamal gets snippy with Andre, and Jamal goes to see Lucious in jail and says Empire's taking all his time, and he can't tour or get in the studio, and Lucious says to get him out, and Jamal can do what he wants. And you can see that it doesn't seem, we can tell that Lucious does not plan on helping out Jamal at all. That's not what he plans on doing here. And Lucious says that Bernie needs to be handled, and Jamal says not. He asks how Andre is doing with Apex Radio, and Lucious says he needs to close the deal, and Jamal says that Hakeem is pissed about the artwork and has him record his new single. And Lucious says the Cookie can't manage Hakeem, and then says his mom hasn't come to see him once. And Lucious says he gets its payback when Jamal doesn't offer sympathy, and he asks Jamal who was the lesbian bitch with his mom at the concert, and Jamal says he doesn't know. And Lucious tells him to find out and says she and Cookie are up to something. And you can tell right away that they are very split. Like, very much right now, it's Jamal and Lucious versus everyone else, which is very interesting. Especially, last season. If you would have told me that Jamal would be on Lucious's side, I would have not believed you at all. Because, obviously, Lucious didn't support Jamal at all. But then, from that one confrontation they had from that one thing they had last season, when Lucious finally understood the talent that Jamal had, it's basically broken Jamal, and I think that definitely is very interesting. So, basically, she says if they were suspects, Andre wakes up from a bad dream and says that they know about him killing Vernon, because remember, Vernon died. And I love how they brought this back because they kind of just forgot about it in the finale, and then they brought it back here. And basically, Rhonda says if they were suspects, they would already have been brought in. And she says if they don't find any evidence, Lucious' case will be thrown out. And Rhonda says Mimi will bite and it will all be good. She asks if he told his pastor about Vernon, and Rhonda tells him he needs to relax and says the company will be his and not Cookie and Hakeem's. And he says he can't believe, and we get this thing that, pretty much everyone wants Empire still, even though Even though Jamal has it, Andre thinks he can run it better, and so does Hakeem, and so does Cookie. And he asks about the baby, and she rubs her stomach, and basically you can see how much that he wants Empire. So Frank comes to sit by Cookie's cousin Jamal, and he says he didn't do it. And Frank says he knows he killed his boy Teddy too, and Jamal says no, and he says he wouldn't do that. And Frank looks askance, then says he's hungry, and he asks if Jamal is hungry. And you can tell just how threatening Frank is. Very much very threatening in this episode, and I thought Chris Rock did a very good job with that. So Mimi and Cookie are at a party. They're throwing for Mimi, and Anika comes over and talks her up. And Cookie is not happy to see her, obviously. And Andre asks her to play along. Hakeem talks to Mimi and flirts. He always flirts with any woman that Hakeem sees. He pretty much flirts with. And they have a lot of sexy, scantily clad ladies. They're kissing on each other as eye candy to Mimi, because Mimi is a lesbian. And Mimi asks why she wants to dispose Lucious. And Cookie says he lost his way and is going to destroy the company, and she wants to save it for her sons. That's the thing I find very interesting. While Lucious is in prison, he's still trying to control Empire on his own, and he has ways of doing that I think that's very interesting. So Mimi has her eye on both Cookie and Anika, and Jamal tells Michael to send the chef Ricardo out. And this was surprising. Jamal is now back with Michael. He's left Ryan, which we knew he left him, but now he's with Michael, and he tells Jamal he's being nasty, and Jamal kisses Michael roughly, then asks if he likes the new place, and he tells Jamal he's blowing up on the charts, and Jamal tells him that he turns him on and says the LGBT party is good for Michael, and they talk about how Ryan means nothing to him, and that Jamal made a mistake, and asks if Michael still wants him, and he does, and basically that's what that was all about. So a woman comes over to flirt with Mimi, and she tells her she's trying too hard, and tells her to move, and she starts to get an attraction to Anika. She thinks that Anika is a lesbian. We get this pretty funny scene where she asks Anika to dance and calls her Anita, and she tries to say no, but Cookie tells her to go dancing anyway. And basically Anika does some twerking. She takes off her sweater, and it was pretty funny to watch. I definitely like that. So Jamal calls Cookie to warn him that she's in danger from Frank, and says he needs her to get Lucious to protect him. And basically, now Cookie knows what's going on. And basically, I understand that, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is too fast-paced, but there had to be a way to get Cookie and Lucious back on the same page, and this was the way to do that, and I thought he did a very good job with that. And Hakeem then shows up annoyed that Jamal called him for a meeting, because, he doesn't feel like he should have to listen to Jamal's orders, and Carol asks if Cookie got the flowers, and says it's, that crazy guy, and Portia says that, Portia says she has to go pee. She hangs up the call, and while Carol desperately tries to warn her, and Cookie then tells Hakeem that they got the investment money and he needs to be in a good place with Jamal when they take the company, and basically that's the thing to do there. So the new prosecutor, Roseanne, comes to see Lucious, and she says she saw an old friend of his, and he says this meeting is illegal. They should not be having it. She says Vernon says Bunky's murder has to do with more than they thought, and she asks him to help solve some other murders and he can get a plea bargain. So he calls her a black bitch in cheap shoes trying to take down hip-hop, and he says she will never be anything more, and she says she'll jam her shoes up his ass. He says he'd pay good money, and she tells him that the shoes are Tom Ford, and walks out. And basically, you can tell that Lucious's, smart-ass comments she does not appreciate, and I thought that was pretty funny. So Frank has visitors, and he has two daughters that visits him. One of his daughters are rapping for him, and Lucious walks over and adds to her rhyme. I'm kind of predicting that Lucious might try to use this girl for Empire in some way. I don't know how, but it just seems like Lucious has all this power, even inside prison, that I think he can be able to do that. And Lucious tells her that she's powerful, and then he hears her, and then he has another visitor, and basically that we know who that is, obviously. So Michael is at Jamal's office with the LGBT people, and Jamal goes in and hears them singing, and he's getting an award, but declines to do a duet, and Andre comes and tells Hakeem it's time, So Cookie moves in lockstep with Anika, Andre, and Hakeem, and they head to a board meeting, and basically they want to take over. They don't trust, they don't like what Jamal's doing, they want Empire, and Hakeem says they're taking over. Cookie tells the board and says they have a controlling interest in Empire, because, remember, Lucious was gonna give Cookie back Empire. She never got back Empire. So now they're trying to do this on their own, and Hakeem says it's just business, and Mimi's already there, and Andre's upset. Mimi says she met with Lucious this morning and made a better deal, and Cookie tells Anika she told her to sleep with Mimi, and Anika says she did, and I love how Cookie is blaming this whole situation on Anika. It's totally something she'd do, and Cookie tells Anika she can't even twerk right. I thought that was pretty funny. But basically, Jamal then turns on the screens, and they see Lucious from his cell, and basically they see that they've lost. Lucious is now giving them a much better deal. Lucious has, still has full control of Empire, and so does Jamal, and nothing's really gonna change that. So basically, it went horrible for them, and I didn't think it was gonna go well, but wow, it could not have gone worse for them. Really, it couldn't have. So Jamal watches Frank eat through his black eye, and he tells Frank to stop. Frank says to tell him what he needs to know, and Jamal says it was Cookie, and Frank says she's no snitch, and he better do better than that. And Jamal says it was Cookie, and Frank thinks about it and decides it's possible, and he says that bitch. Now, there was originally supposed to be this reveal here that Frank was a cannibal, and I like that they didn't do that because he was already pretty threatening. We didn't need that to add to the plot, and I'm happy that they didn't do that because that would have been pretty pointless. And Cookie then tells Jamal that she was trying to protect him from the move, but he says it's backstabbing. He says, obviously he's pissed because he was working with Lucious, and he says at least when Lucious threw him in the trash, he did it to his face, and I do agree with Jamal that it is worse to do something behind someone's back than do it to their face. It definitely is worse to do that because, when you do it to their face, you know how they feel about you, and, he just feels this terrible. And Cookie says her sacrifice started this company, and Jamal says he's tired of hearing it. She says he's turning into his father, and she's watching it happen. I completely agree with that. And Cookie then goes home and sees a present in front of her door, and she asks Carol how she got into her house and what she's playing with her wigs. And Carol says she tried to tell her assistant the roses are really from Frank, who you can tell has an attraction to Cookie. And Cookie looks at the box, and Carol sends the girls to the other room. Cookie opens the box, sees a head in it, and Cookie curses no. She's freaking out, obviously, and she demands to know why that's there. So, I don't know whose head it was, I couldn't tell, but obviously somebody's head's in there. So Michael tells Jamal he's sorry about Miss Lawrence and says he knows he's not comfortable around flamboyant dudes. And Jamal asks what he can do and offers $50K. And that's the thing I like about Jamal. While Jamal is gay, he's not flamboyant. He's not, he's just not your typical flamboyant gay. And Michael says canceling at the last minute doesn't mean he can buy him, and Jamal tells him to apologize for him. Michael calls him shady, but is flirty when he says it. So Jamal's then in the studio, and Becky's with him. The producer gets a call, cuts off the music, and he says Cookie's on the phone, but Jamal doesn't want to take it, and Becky then makes him take it. And again, these are things that Lucious has dealt with, but for Jamal, it's just a big deal because he's never had this much power before. So Cookie says to stop what he's doing and go to his father's house so he'll be safe. And she says this is very real. And he sees she sends security there. And I like that Cookie's trying to look out for her son. Despite the fact that she really doesn't like the direction he's going, she obviously still wants to look out for him. Because, look, she was the one that helped him out in the first place. And, now he's kind of not with her at this point. So Carol cries. Cookie says to quit crying like Tammy Faye Baker and get the kids and go to Lucious's house. And Cookie heads to the jail to see Lucious, and he sits and says she looks like Mr. T with all her gold. I thought that was pretty funny. What I liked about this scene, though, is that, of course, Lucious and Cookie are not on the best of terms here, but you see how they will always have each other's best interests at heart when push comes to shove. And she says she didn't come all this way to play games with him. Lucious says he still loves her and is sorry he didn't come visit her and says this place is hell. And she says he's been there 3 months and talked to her about after 5 years. And I do agree with Cookie that, she really can't sympathize for Lucious because he's only been there for 3 months and she was there for 5 years. So basically, there's nothing he can say to her that can make him, that can make her feel bad for him. he's deserved every minute of what he's gone through. And he says he's sorry it didn't work out with Mimi, and she says she did it for their sons. She says it's tearing the boys apart. He gets flirty, and she says to save it for Anika or whatever voice in there he's diddling. And Lucious says he loves and hates her, then asks why she came. And Cookie says they're messing with them and says it's Frank. She says she needs him to fix it, and right away he wants to know what Frank did, because obviously he's gonna have Cookie's best interest. That's what he wants to do here. So Lucious goes to sit with Frank, and this scene was very interesting. You didn't know what was going to happen in this scene, and that's something I definitely really loved. And he tells them there's a problem between they can work it out. And the family is all holed up at Lucious, and Rhonda is annoyed by the kids. It's pretty funny because the kids are like playing the piano and annoying them. It was pretty funny to watch, and she's asking what this is all about, and Carol says there's a guy they used to run drugs for back in the day, and he was really dangerous, and Lucius says he thinks Frank's daughter could be part of Empire, and Frank says throwing his daughter a bone won't fix this, and says Cookie ratted him to the feds, and he says this is between he and Cookie and not Lucius. And he tells Lucius they're cool unless he says something different, and Lucius says it's good, and Frank says he's always like that, and Lucius is cold-blooded, and Lucius says war with Cookie means war with him. He's going to look, he's going to choose his family over Frank, obviously, because he knows that Frank is not gonna, is gonna betray him, and that he shouldn't trust him, and, Lucius is smart with that, and Frank says he's crazier than he thought, and he tells his guys to, and basically right away, Lucius says to kill him fast and quiet, and he tells Lucius bye, then walks off. Lucius says he's confused, tells him to sit, and Frank's guys step up for Lucius, and Lucius says Frank wanted to rule the streets, but he wanted to rule the world, and Lucius explains he paid off Mike's mortgage, is taking care of Bam Bam's sick kid, and says Guy just likes the music. Lucius stands, says kill him, make it loud and long, and he tells Frank he's going to sign his baby girl and sleep with her, and Lucius walks away, and Frank screams, and they kill Frank in this episode, and you know what, I was fine with that, because you know what, Frank is a huge threat to him and his family, and when, again, like I said, when push comes to shove, while he is, while I can't really sympathize with Lucius and say he is a good guy, because he's really not, he's a very self-centered bastard, he does care about his family. He will help out Cookie because he truly does love her, and I think it's the relation between them is always very interesting, and that's something that I really do love about the show, is how complex their relationship is. So Jamal tells Hakeem he's going to bury his album and it won't see the light of day, and Hakeem says he knows his album will outsell his, so he's killing it, and Jamal says it's because he betrayed him, and, Hakeem is saying that he deserved Empire, and that he's really pissed about this, because, he should be the one making the decisions here. And Cookie comes back and says it's all over, and Rhonda asks what's going on, and Cookie says an old beef with a very dangerous man, and Hakeem asks if Lucius took care of it from prison, and she says he's still their dad, and she's still their mom, and to never forget that. And I like that despite the fact that she doesn't, support Lucius, that she is saying, look, he's still your dad, and you should still admire him for that. And Jamal smiles and tells her to get out. And this scene was just incredible. I love this scene. Jussie Smollett's performance in this scene was great, because you can just see, again, if you were to tell me that Jamal was to do this last season, I wouldn't have believed you. But again, the power is getting to his head, and he very much is turning into Lucius, and you see in this scene. He tells them all to get out. He kicks them all out. He says to get out of his father's house now, says they all betrayed him. And Rhonda says no problem. Hakeem says not even his house. And Cookie tells Jamal she can fix this, and they can be a family again. He tells her to get out. She slaps his face and asks who he thinks he's talking to, and he glares, and she slaps him again, and he asks, are you done now? And he backs her out of the house and closes it in her face, then breaks down crying for a moment, mainly because I think if he's just very overwhelmed by all the power, and he stomps in the house, and that's how the episode ends. And I thought that was an incredible ending. I mean, he basically said, fuck you to the woman that got him there. The woman that's made him this powerful, and now he doesn't care that she's made him powerful. He's faced with so much right now that there's nothing she could have said to him that could have made him not do that. And I thought overall this was an amazing premiere, guys. I mean, to say his premiere was just, crazy is an understatement. So much on this premiere, and I really do love that. And let's talk about Lucius, because this is going to be very interesting. The way that Lucius is basically trying to run Empire from the prison is definitely very interesting, because now we definitely have a power struggle here. It's Lucius and Jamal versus everyone else, and that's very different from last season, and I really love that. I like how different Jamal is as a character, because he's so overwhelmed by what he's doing, and obviously him running Empire was not the good thing to do. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but now he has all this fame and he needs, he has all this fame and he has all this stuff he needs to do and he doesn't know what to do with it all, that he's taking his anger on his family, and if he keeps going the way he's going, he could very much turn into Lucious, and that's obviously not going to be good for anyone because nobody wants to see him turn into Lucious. I don't, at least. I don't want to see Jamal turn into Lucious. I like Jamal as a character, and I hope things go well for him, but we don't know at this point. So, obviously, probably listening to Lucious is not a good idea because Lucious does not, I think, have Jamal's best interest at heart. I think, Lucious will probably take Empire back. He'll get rid of Jamal very quickly. He'll take it for himself, and that's obviously what he wants because we've always known that Lucious does things for himself. Now, for his family, he does things for himself, and that's how he'll always be. Now, signing Frank's daughter, that's going to be very interesting to see if he actually does do that and how he does this. We saw in the promo that looks like he's going to try to record stuff in prison, which is interesting. We'll have to see how that works out. That's going to be very interesting. Is everyone going to find out that Andre and Rhonda killed Vernon? Obviously, they're doing a good job of hiding it, but definitely there are people that are starting to think that maybe that there was someone that killed Vernon. Obviously, they're going to start to wonder where Vernon is and why he's not there. So, I think Andre's eventually going to have to confess about it. I mean, Michelle knows about it, so he's got to tell someone. I really feel this could end up really bad for Andre, and, we don't want a repeat of last season with all the addiction and stuff like that. So this could make or break, Andre. It could end up really bad for him, and I don't really know what's going to happen with that, but that's going to be very interesting to see if Andre does confess about that. That definitely is something I'm interested in seeing what they do with that. Now, it seems like next episode, Cookie is going to try to run her own company because she's really sick of this, and we'll have to see how that works out. That's going to be very interesting. Hakeem. I'm not really sure what Hakeem really wants to do. I think Hakeem just really wants power and doesn't exactly know what he wants, but he knows that he just doesn't want Lucious to run any of this, and he thinks that Lucious should not be running this at all, and that he is, Lucious and Jamal, that is, they should not be running it at all, and that he should be the one running it. Hakeem, I think, is would he be even worse because he's probably the most immature out of the three, but you can understand why he's upset. I mean, the things that he wants, his demands, Jamal's just not listening to. Jamal isn't listening to any of the family. He listens to his demands over everyone else's, and the things that Jamal is faced with, again, are things that Lucious is faced with every single day, and he just is very underwhelmed by it, and that's going to be very interesting to see what ends up happening with that. It also seems like he's overwhelming Becky, and he's really making Becky upset, which is fine. If I had to have one complaint for this episode, is that we really did not need to make Portia and Becky main characters because they don't really do anything more than they did last season, and if I know that they're main characters, they might give them more to do, but I'm just not sure if they are because they didn't have much to do in this episode. Also, Mimi. Are they going to be able to convince Mimi, maybe? Are they going to get her out of this deal with Lucious? Because right now Lucious has that deal, and we'll have to see what happens with that, but there has to be a way to figure out how to do maybe something with Mimi secretly. We'll have to see. I mean, it's probably going to they're going to have legal problems, definitely, but we'll have to see what they do with that, because that definitely is going to be very interesting to see where that goes. But overall, guys, an amazing premiere, a great start to the season. What a way to kick off the season. I thought this was a fantastic premiere overall. It really reminded me of how much I missed this show. I can't wait for the rest of this season. Like I said, it's one of the most surprising shows on TV, and it continues amazing me, really, it does. And I really did love this episode. But let me know what you guys thought of this episode. I thought this was a great premiere, and that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for the series premiere of Heroes Reborn, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.